Welcome everybody to our live stream for this week. Let's begin with the bow. And let's sit together for a few minutes, Shikantaza style, or what we call the posture of pure awareness. So I'll guide you through that. So to begin with, finding a space midway between the perineum and the navel, and beginning to breathe into that general area, the lower dantian or the hara. We're going to be doing the sitting practice of meditation, and first we need to begin to connect with the source, because it is the source that sits through us rather than that we are sitting and connecting with the source. So feeling a space, trying to find a space the size of a duck egg or even a goose egg in the lower belly, maybe 3 finger widths below the navel and back toward the middle of the body. And breathing into it. On the in-breath, breathing directly into this place, not through the nose and the trachea. On the out-breath, staying in that space. In-breath filling the lower dantian. Out-breath, lower dantian collapses slightly. In-breath, really trying to feel the breath going in and the balloon of the lower dantian filling. So really trying to put your awareness there and feel the breath filling the space and then emptying out of the space, and the balloon deflates slightly. In-breath filling, out-breath deflating. And then trying to feel the sensation in the middle of the space on the in-breath. It could be a region of coolness. It could be a point. What's there? When you breathe in, what do you find in terms of your internal somatic sense, your visceral experience in the lower belly. And then as you breathe into the lower belly, having the feeling of letting go of anything that's getting in the way there, anything pressing in, any debris, any subtle clouds or obstructions. Just on the in-breath, imagine you're just sweeping them away to the periphery, just sweeping them out, sweeping them out. Letting everything fall away so the space in the lower belly becomes empty, immaculate, and free. And then beginning to draw that space of the lower belly up the central channel. So in the in-breath, having the feeling you're drawing that lower belly space up the central channel. You're pulling it up with your breath on the in-breath. At your own speed. Being very far back in your body as you do this. So as you're drawing the space of the lower belly up, your awareness is becoming long. It's in the lower belly, and that space is very open, very empty, very free. And that very same space is felt along the back of the body. Bring it up behind the heart, behind the throat, up to the occiput at the back of the head. And then with that sense of the fundamental space, the basic soma, then adjusting your posture around it to see where it feels the most unimpeded and open, that back line. It's almost as if you're like a snake uncoiling and trying to free up the whole inner central channel space, free it up. And let the upsweep of the space from the lower belly lift the back of the head. Chin dropping slightly. You're in the space of the lower belly and the central channel. It's one continuous corridor. Central channel rises from this boundless ocean in the lower belly. And you're working with it. Ears moving back toward being over the shoulders. Back of the neck opens. Everything furthering the utter empty, open, and free feeling at our core, rising from the empty, open ocean of the lower belly. We are that space. We're nothing but that space. It's our essential nature. It's who we are. It's why we're here. Feeling the back of the eyes, opening the back of the eyes, which frees the central channel at the back of the head. Lips slightly parted, or mouth open, tongue floating, which frees the central channel further at the back. Opposite our jaw. And then a very light touch on the breath. We're breathing into the lower belly. It's very natural. There's nothing forced. As we breathe in, there's an upflow of awareness up the central channel. Spacious, empty, but tingling with life. On the in-breath, very, very light touch. The tingling of the space of the central channel permeates our body. It flows out through all the 84,000 nadis. So in the in-breath, there's a feeling of life expanding, billowing out and suffusing throughout our body, as if we're drawing the primordial space of the lower belly up and into our body on the in-breath. And the body itself lighting up and becoming tremendously sensitive and awake and aware about the world. The Source knows the fabulous multiplicity of the myriad things through our body. You could say the Source has created our body so that it can know the totality. That's how it feels in this particular meditation practice. We're deeply, deeply rooted in the beginningless beginning of all things, in the depths of the lower belly. And that beginningless beginning expresses itself in our body, in our experience, in our openness, in our tenderness, in our sensitivity. And it's all one thing. So breathing into the lower belly and then tracking the flow of the energized space up the central channel and throughout our whole body. And feeling toward the world. So let's sit like this for a few minutes together. Stay present in the lower belly. Stay present in the central channel. And stay present throughout your body. You're resting in the primordial, and your primordial being is available to the whole universe. So when you're sitting and doing your own personal practice, it's good to set up the practice in a manner such as we did today, and then just sit in that space. And you're really not doing anything. You're just being present. Thinking is doing something. It's departing. It's trying to work something out. We're truly resting without any movement of the mind at all. Resting in the space. That is truly free and forever. Okay, very good. It's wonderful sitting with you in this way, and although we're not spending hours and hours, the contact and the intimacy are very real and really quite beyond time and space, and it's a blessing for all of us to be able to do this together. So I wanted to talk briefly about what we're doing, and I feel it's important to do this just based on the reach of these live streams, really, which is pretty much all over the globe, and a lot of the questions that come in that I don't get to address. So really, what we're about in Dharma Ocean is we're not really exactly delivering a commodity. And I'm personally not that interested in having 10,000 students. I'm not interested in being famous. I'm not interested in, having, hundreds of millions of dollars of properties and, this huge organization. Really, what we're doing here and what I'm about is trying to pass on something to you that I received from my teacher and I found to be of infinite value, priceless, beyond priceless. And I would like to pass that on. And the reason I want to pass it on is because of the nature of the gift, and also because that's what Rinpoche wanted. He taught something very unusual, very, very unusual. It's interesting, I met today with an old friend who was with me in the early days of Naropa. And she's been, traveling all over the country, meeting with schools, meeting with, Tibetan communities, just kind of finding out what's going on out there. And, this is not a person who's really particularly trying to toot her own horn or toot Naropa's horn, but, her observation is that what this lineage is, what Trungpa Rinpoche gave to all of us, what's going on at Naropa, really, it is unique. And there's not much point in pretending otherwise. So I feel that very strongly, and he felt it strongly as well, and he wanted the teachings that I'm giving to you to survive. And when somebody hands you back your life, and in fact gives you a life that is so far beyond anything you ever imagined, you feel, however much on a personal level I was afraid of him, or a lot of times had a very hard time making myself go to interviews because I was afraid of what might happen. Beyond that, I feel, tremendous devotion and love and appreciation and gratitude. And, some people sometimes ask me, why are you spending your whole life, trying to, to do this work? And that's the reason. Because, for me, when you're given the fullness and the completeness of life, what else is there? And what else are you doing with your life? This is me talking to me. And why wouldn't I try to pass this most precious gift, this very unique teaching on to other people? Of course I would. So that's that's where I'm coming from. And, I personally really, the main thing is I would like people to be able to receive it. And I would like some people to fully receive it and be able to pass it on to other people. I'd like to have a few students like that. I think I do have a few. And I hope there will be more students in the future who will really feel the way I do, that this is the center of existence and the deepest legacy of the human person reflected in these teachings, and that I will have a few students who are willing to go through the training in order to be able to deliver this to another generation. And then beyond that, whatever I can do to get these teachings out and give people hope that their lives are worthwhile, their lives are meaningful, and whatever situation they may be in, it's all workable, as we've discussed. And in fact, it's all part of the universe's gift. Our biggest problem is, as I've said many times, even in these live streams, is that we are unwilling to take a chance on ourselves. We feel very hesitant about who we are. We don't want to trust ourselves. We want something that's more secure and more socially acceptable, and that has more credentials and has more financial security and so on. And so we adapt ourselves to a lot of things around us, and we begin to think of ourselves in those terms. And at that point, we've kind of lost who we are. And the message of this lineage is we don't need to give ourselves away. In fact, the most satisfying, the most fulfilled, the most powerful, the most creative life is lived when we are willing to take a chance on who we are right now and not offload responsibility for who we are onto other people. So there's a story told in the tradition about a Indian teacher named Tilopa, who supposedly lived in the 9th, 10th century of the Common Era, and he was a person who held this lineage, and he lived in the jungle. He didn't hang around monasteries because actually the people in the monasteries didn't understand him. They thought he was too weird, and he would occasionally go to monasteries to beg for food. Because the monasteries often had a lot of food from the lay people. And there was a person who later became his disciple named Naropa. And he had had a vision in which he was told to go look for Tilopa. Naropa, as some of you may know, was a very well-known scholar at Nalanda University, very accomplished, high-ranking intellectual. And one day he had a vision of an old hag And the hag asked him, you're a great Dharma teacher. Wow. Feel very honored to be in your presence, Naropa. Very impressive what you've accomplished. Do you understand the words of the teachings? And he said, yes. And she laughed because it was true. And then she said, do you understand what they mean? In your heart? In your experience? And arrogant as he was, he said, yes, I understand that too. And she wept furiously because he lied. To his credit, he realized she had something for him. She told him to go into the jungle in the east, which, Nalanda University is not in the total east. And the east is like this trackless jungle that goes on forever, all the way to the Bay of Bengal. She said, go to the east, you need to find Tilopa. And Tilopa is your true teacher. And if you find him, there's hope. Maybe you can understand what these teachings are really about. And he goes, well, where is he? And she just waved her hand in the direction of this trackless thousands of square miles, tens of thousands of square miles of jungle. And she said, over there. So Naropa set out and wandered, went here, he went there, he went everywhere. And one day, after long search, he happened to come to a monastery in the jungle, small monastery, and there were some monks there and they were preparing a meal, and Naropa decided to, he was a monk also, he decided to ask them if he could join them, and they said yes. And then this filthy beggar came in, and he kind of sat over on the side with the dogs to get the leftovers. And something in Naropa woke up, and he thought, maybe could this be Tilopa? Could it be Tilopa? He has kind of the same feeling as that old hag in my vision. Maybe it's Tilopa. And when he said that, Tilopa said, because it was Tilopa, he said, it is Tilopa, it is Tilopa. And then Naropa thought, no, it couldn't be Tilopa. And Tilopa said, it's not Tilopa, it couldn't be Tilopa. And Naropa knew that he had actually found his teacher. But the other people at the meal became enraged at this filthy beggar who had somehow, come in and was expecting scraps, and they beat him and they threw him out. And Naropa followed him. And Naropa studied with him, and Naropa went through life and death with this teacher. And his experience was an experience of transmission. And I want to tell you a little bit about what happened with him, because this is the part of what we do that a lot of people don't understand and have a lot of difficulty with. For one thing, in order to receive this lineage, Naropa had to give up all of his beliefs and his ideas about reality. And a lot of us don't want to do that. We want to hang on to our precious preconceptions and assumptions and ideas about how things are. And when we meet a teacher or a lineage that doesn't go along with that, we get very upset. The second thing about Tilopa was that he also did not go along with Naropa's emotional games. Naropa played a lot of emotional games, as we all do, trying to manipulate, trying to position himself vis-a-vis Tilopa, trying to play the victim, trying to play the arrogant scholar, just playing running a lot of emotional trips. And Tilopa simply did not buy it. Many times, I think, when we come to spiritual communities, and we come to teachers, and we come to lineages, we expect them to tolerate our neuroses. We expect them to tolerate the emotional games that we play, the way we try to make ourselves feel safe and secure. And unfortunately, a true community and a true lineage doesn't do that. And this was certainly Naropa's experience, and you can read about this in the life and teachings of Naropa, what he had to go through. And then, of course, the other difficulty with this lineage is that, in some sense, we really are completely on our own at the end of the day. If we bring into our practice and our relationship with our teacher and the community, if we bring in a whole battery of ideas about how they should be, a lot of blame, when they don't live up to what we personally think they should live up to, a lot of entitlement, we feel entitled to be treated in a certain way. Trungpa Rinpoche once said, the job of the teacher is to insult you. And, it was very helpful for me to hear that at a certain point, because I felt that, whatever I tried to do, it didn't fly. And I personally, once he named it, it's like, yeah, that's how I feel. I feel insulted all the time by him. It was very interesting to kind of watch the scene around him, because a lot of people felt insulted, and not, personally by him, but just by the whole situation. Their particular little neurotic ego trip just wasn't, somehow didn't make it. They felt very insulted, and they went away. A lot of people went away. A lot of people had expectations about him and what he should do and what he shouldn't do as a teacher, and they went away. One of the examples that I find so interesting is Rinpoche periodically smoked. And as I learned in time, he didn't smoke because he actually liked it. He probably didn't like it. But he smoked because at that time his students smoked. And a lot of people expected him as a guru to be very pure and to not smoke, to not drink, and to use very pristine language at all times. A lot of people in the 70s, that's how they felt, particularly in the very early 70s. And I've actually met people that left Trungpa Rinpoche because they saw him smoke a cigarette, and because that was out of keeping with what they personally believed a guru should be. Rinpoche never, ever stopped saying that if you are looking, there's an analogy in Tibetan Buddhism, hunting the musk deer, hunting the deer for its musk. He said people who are looking for a guru that simply fits in with their own previous expectations are like hunting the musk deer. And at that point they can't hear the teachings, they can't smell the teachings, they can't taste the teachings, they can't understand the teachings, because basically they're hunting their own ego. So I mention this story of Tilopa Naropa because we live in an environment where that kind of lineage, that kind of understanding, and that kind of expectation is very, very hard to find. And this is another thing my friend today was saying, that the Tibetans in general and other spiritual teachers, not all of them, but most of them, that's not what they're doing. They're not doing the Tilopa and Naropa thing. But the thing is, in Dharma Ocean and also at Naropa, that is what we're doing. We've talked in the past about how dysregulation is part of the spiritual journey, And that's what happened to Naropa, constantly being, whatever he came up with was, it just fell off a cliff. And he was back to square one. He was back to nowhere and being nobody and losing his sense of security and sense of believing a lot of things about who he was. And out of the ashes of that dysregulation came a new, more integrated, more profound, more open state of being. And that's what this lineage is about. So in this lineage, and I bring this up because we have been teaching in the UK and we're going back again. I'm leaving, I think, May 28th for the United Kingdom, and I'll be doing teaching there. And, in the UK and in Europe in general, the guru thing seems somewhat alive and well. And I have to tell people over and over, we are not doing the guru thing. I'm not doing the guru thing. That's not what I'm doing. That's not who I am. I'm doing I would say the opposite of the guru thing, which is that the whole purpose and point of this tradition is to bring you to a place where you are able to take full responsibility for your life, where you are empowered not into your ego and your neurosis and your impulsiveness, but you are empowered into the full depths of your own body's wisdom, and you have learned how to surrender to it, to make contact, to hear it, to understand it, and to give in. And that is far more powerful and far more creative in the long run and far more helpful to everybody else than the guru thing. The guru thing could be a temporary expedient, and in my case it definitely was. But as Rinpoche also always said, when you study with a guru, if that guru isn't teaching you how to stand on your own feet, you've got a problem. So at the end of the day, what happened with Naropa was that he received the lineage of Tilopa after 12 years of unbelievably arduous and difficult and painful and terrifying confrontation with who he was and with how he constantly tried to manipulate and blame reality and constantly complaining against the universe about everything. That's what we do. And he, over and over and over, had to see how he did that and had to go through training to the point where he actually learned how to let it go, let it be, and to be as naked and open and empty as his teacher, Tilopa. And Naropa did carry that teaching, and he transmitted it to somebody named Marpa, who brought it to Tibet. And because of that, the sacrifice of that one person, this person Naropa, and then the later people, we have this teaching today. So, my personal interest is in finding a few people who, or even one, that would work for me. Even one person who is willing to go through the full training and carry this lineage on. And if I can have 5, that would be wonderful. So much more. And then, as I said, also in addition, to spread these teachings about the goodness of our life to everyone who's willing to listen and who has the openness and the trust and the fundamental sense of sacredness of life to be able to hear and take the teachings in and benefit from them. So it's just different, it's different from what often goes under the name of spirituality. And I feel it's important, that you understand what's at stake and what's being asked, and also what the outcome might be. So Elizabeth is here, and we weren't sure she was going to make it because her husband is out of town, but you did make it, and I really appreciate your being here, Elizabeth, so we can do the question and answer thing. How are things going?
A lot going on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So you're a single parent for a little while?
Yeah.
How long?
Well, it depends on what happens with this storm we have coming.
Yes.
Hopefully he can get home this
Yeah,
weekend.
that's right. Where's he coming from?
Maine.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, I heard in the mountains 3 to 5 feet of snow, and then down here 1 to 2 feet in our area. So that's heavy. That's heavy duty. Well, I hope he makes it. When's he coming back, supposedly?
Saturday.
Oh, no. That's like right in the middle of it.
Julie Bowler, Song of Sisters, watching Serena right now. So I
Oh,
could be here.
great. Tell her thank you so much.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
Sorry, let me get this up here. Okay. So David in the United Kingdom asks, I've been practicing somatic meditation for about a year. I've been meditating for a long time, and I see that I was using meditation to escape from life. I have done years of therapy after a very difficult childhood, but I have not healed the deep trauma that still seems to be carried in my body. When I attempt 10 points practice, I often don't get past the feet. I get an almost unbearable hollow feeling that I cannot really put into words. This feeling seems to be in the feet, behind the toes, and also in my lower chest and upper abdomen. For months when I practice, this feeling comes and seems to be as strong and debilitating as ever. I would appreciate your feedback on how to get past this. I have suffered horrible abuse, and much of which I can now remember, but this feeling comes without any images.
Well, I think the feeling, I would say there is the primordial feeling of emptiness and nothingness. And then I think what happens often in trauma is there is an overlay over that of terror and fear. And, neurobiologically, I don't know if people know about the Vagal System, but the Vagal System is basically defines our parasympathetic nervous system, which is what we're looking for in meditation, which is not the fight or flight, but the deep peace and the connectedness. And what happens in trauma is that the sympathetic nervous system, which is the fight or flight, gets tangled up in our feeling of deep peace. And so when we begin to experience the emptiness of the body, we feel terrified, because what's happening is that the parasympathetic system is being contaminated by the sympathetic nervous system. You can read about this in Sharon Stanley's book. She's written a very, very good book. Now, what's the title? You can look it up on Amazon. I can't think of the title right off, but I promise I'll bring it in for our next live stream. I may could even send it out to people. But I think, long story short, I think what's happening is that actually he's really at the gate of, a very fundamental openness in his body. And I think working directly and being with, which it sounds like he's able to be with this feeling of, I don't know, he didn't say very much, but, maybe hollowness and death and, impending doom. There could be a lot of emotional, survival overlay on the feeling, but working with it and saying, really trying to dismantle it. And what the body practices do is they help us separate the sympathetic fight or flight response from the parasympathetic deep rest and deep peace and deep connectedness. The body work should help him gradually tease those apart. When he can get underneath the attitudinal part of the trauma, or let's say the sympathetic nervous system part of it, to the deep, to the emptiness that's actually behind it, which is in our whole body, then the feeling is enormously peaceful. But he can't quite get there yet. And what I'm trying to say is I think he's very, very close. And I do think, when we've been deeply traumatized, that working with one of the trauma therapies would be a very, very good thing. And I know in the UK, memory reconsolidation is a very important technique that, some of our students are therapists in the UK that do that. So Peter Levine's work is always very good. There's a lot of ongoing somatic therapy, I think it would be very helpful. Just keep working with it. But I think he's really quite close. Yeah, to some resolution. Yeah. But I think the whole notion of trying to get past it probably isn't that helpful, because what you're trying to get past is not the fundamental feeling of openness and emptiness, but a part of it. And if he just says get past the whole thing, then he's going to miss what we're actually trying to do here. So I'm not sure that that's really very helpful. How can I get past it?
Okay. Kayla in Taiwan. Last week in the live podcast, you said that we must find a new posture if our legs fall asleep during seated meditation. I have been meditating regularly for 6 years, and one of my legs, or both, always fall asleep. However, I can sit for over an hour with some part of my legs being asleep, and I still feel focused and clear. When I sit on the floor in Sukhasana, I feel grounded and comfortable, even when my legs are asleep. I'm wondering why you say it's important to find a new position if that's happening. Is it always a hindrance, or is it okay?
Well, I think, the problem, I think, is that when your legs are asleep, you don't know if you're actually hurting yourself. And I know a lot of Zen friends that have hurt themselves, legs go to sleep, and they just keep sitting, and then they find out later they've cut off circulation and there's been damage. I mean, and that's also was my story. I actually had, I'd injured a knee, and when I sat, my legs went to sleep, and I was actually, the injury was becoming much, much worse, and I didn't know it because my legs had gone to sleep. So I think I'm not, we'd have to talk to a neurologist. I'm not sure if just going to sleep is a problem, but I think hurting yourself could be a problem in the long term if this is a regular thing that one does.
Mm-hmm. Zoe, Reggie mentions Hongzhu in enticing manner to my ears. Unfortunately, I have not been able to trace him on the internet, perhaps because I am misspelling his name. Would you please help me trace him, perhaps with a correction of spelling or some other link?
Yeah, Hongzhi, which Caroline tells me is pronounced Hongzhi. I don't know why. Why is it pronounced Hongzhi? And the title of the book in question is Cultivating the Empty Field by Taigen Dan Leighton. It's a beautiful translation. It's a short collection of his meditation instructions. And then if you start with that book, then you'll find some other things, by him. But I think his meditation instructions are the most brilliant and profound and helpful of any that I have found in Buddhism. And I emailed Dan and I told him so, and I said, are you planning to do more? And he said, no, I moved on to other things. And we could say, well, that's great, maybe somebody else can do it. But I think Taigen Dan Leighton is a genius at translating Hongzhi. And if anybody can entice him to do more translations of Hongzhi's work, I think it would benefit the world very greatly.
Tara, I have a friend who calls himself Taoist, but he won't do any meditation practice. He seems to think that giving all his time and energy to treating people in his Chinese medical practice is enough, and that ego is to be transcended. Reggie, you've mentioned that the lineage is very influenced by Taoism, and I wonder if you could elaborate on that. I think my friend might have misunderstood what Taoism is all about.
Well, the thing is, you have to realize there are a lot of different kinds of Taoism. And I also have a friend who's a scholar of Taoism. In fact, he's a very well-known scholar of Taoism, and his thing is just to live and be natural, and he doesn't meditate. And that is a Taoist style, just to kind of go with things and go with the flow. But if you read, frankly, spiritual Taoism of Lao Tzu and Zhuangzi and some of these folks, and some of the Zen teachers that were deeply influenced. I mean, they talk about the importance of practice and of training. And I do know people even today. I know of somebody who his teacher put him through a 100-day dark retreat with no food, and that's practice. That is serious meditation practice. And so we can talk about Taoism, which is connected with Qigong, and those folks, sometimes don't meditate. We can talk Taoism connect with medical practice. They may not meditate. We can talk about a sort of Taoist lifestyle, and they don't meditate. But I think, that's why I think the, Chan tradition became so powerful, because there were these other Taoist movements, and in the 8th and 9th century, the Taoists who were deep meditators joined forces with the Indian Buddhist meditators. And after Taoism was absorbed by, and I'm just going by, the histories that I've read, but after Taoism spiritual Taoism, meditating Taoism was absorbed by Chan Buddhism, there was no independent spiritual Taoism anymore. So, yeah, I think we have to make room for a lot of different approaches, but, to me, the most interesting and most profound are the Taoists, who meditated in the way that the Chan Buddhists did, in the way that we do,
This woman named Kira from Ontario. I was devastated to cancel my attendance for the Body Loves retreat. Both myself and my 18-month-old son came down with the flu, and I realized that I just couldn't make it. It was a very painful decision for me.
Yeah.
What's really interesting is that I knew I wouldn't be able to make it probably shortly after I signed up. I knew it in my body, but my awareness was in denial. Whenever I'd think about it, I would get a sick feeling in my stomach and to some extent my throat. But instead of listening, I would push it away and tell myself that everything would be fine. In retrospect, it's like an obvious decision, but I was committed to making it happen as I felt a deep need to reconnect with my practice and my root teacher, who I had lost just over a year ago to cancer. I very much wanted to find space to reconnect with her and the lineage through practice. What I realized is that it would be insanity to attend a retreat with this theme against my body's own intelligence, and also to not be, that my child needed the love of my body, is what she's pretty much saying. In some ways, I feel like I did attend the retreat, and I learned much more than I imagined I would when I signed up, so thank you for that. I'm wondering if you could talk...
Such is the magic of the lineage, yeah.
Yeah. I'm wondering if you could talk a little about whether or not there's a pattern to what I experienced that can be decoded, such as a known relationship between the solar plexus and what that means, so to speak, or do we all have to decode our own body's language? In other words, what did I miss?
Well, I don't think it's not a matter of decoding the body's language. We have to learn how to hear what's already going on, and it really, frankly, is self-evident once you tune into it. It's interesting, Caroline and I went down to Louisville and met with our friend David Rome, who is a focusing teacher. He's also was a very close student of Trungpa Rinpoche, and he wrote a book called The Body Knows the Answer. And we were talking about this very point, and it's not a matter of decoding what's going on in the body. As if the body gives us something, then we have to sit down with almost a dictionary to figure out what the body's saying. But it's a matter of realizing that the body is speaking in a language that is resonating in our state of being, but because we're so caught in our thinking, we can't feel it, we can't sense it. So I think it's that simple. It's a matter of tuning in to our body. And I think David's book, David Rome, R-O-M-E, The Body Knows the Answer, is a very, very good book. And I think that anybody that wants to pursue this whole issue of the wisdom of the body and how do you connect with it, do very well to read that book. Yeah.
I think my office was full today of a lot of people that are their body's telling them all sorts of things. And I think one of the saddest things I feel in our culture is people don't know how to listen, and they don't know what to do when the volume just keeps getting turned up and up and up, and they feel like they're being punished. Or, I mean, this person I'm thinking of today, it was like she was just being squeezed, like being pushed against the wall, and I could see that life wanted her to just shift everything, but she didn't know how.
Yeah.
She couldn't see past her own grabbing.
Ideas. Yeah.
And she had so much openness and sincerity and sweetness, but she's really stuck. And
interesting.
And then to work with people like that, just trying to find ways to Get them to open to what life's trying to tell them so they
Yeah.
can see it.
Yeah.
Much less doing it myself.
Well, it's challenging. You have to realize that you don't know what's going on, and you have to just put your awareness in the middle of your body and see what's going on. What's happening. It's not that easy.
You really have to learn to trust yourself too, which
Oh boy.
a lot of people don't.
This is true. Yeah, trust your very subtle feelings. I mean, we talk about the small, still voice, but the voice of the body, its own pure voice is very, very small and very still. And that's why, as you know, with somatic descent, we really have to train ourselves to be able to hear. By the way, I think Sharon Stanley's book is called Body-Centered and Relational Approaches to Resolving Trauma, something like that. I highly, highly recommend this book. This is a great book. And this woman is doing work in the trauma field that is so much more integrative than anything I've read. I mean, there's some wonderful work out there, but this is really something. Sharon Stanley.
Great.
Yeah.
Ruvain asks, are all beings connected? If so, how?
Ruvain, I think that's up for each one of us to discover. The question isn't are they abstractly connected, but because science tells us that all beings are very much interrelated, and our bodies are porous to the whole universe. So we know that on a kind of scientific level. But I think the real question is for each one of us, and for you, is do you feel connected to other people? And if so, how? How connected do you feel, or how disconnected do you feel? And that's really what we have to work on. The abstract answer, I don't think, is going to be very helpful.
Martin in Slovakia. I meditate regularly for almost a year, and I discovered your recording of your breathing body, and I found it very transforming. Although I sleep well, very often I wake up 3 o'clock in the morning, and sometimes I fall asleep, and sometimes I'm awake for hours. You suggested threefold breathing to silence thoughts during the night in your breathing body. Is that best for sleepless nights, or are there other useful techniques?
Well, now we come back to the vagal nerve, if nobody is stressed out about that. So the vagal nerve runs from the brain stem, and there are two branches. One is called the ventral vagal nerve, which comes down in the front, connects with the lungs and the heart. Now we're talking about the parasympathetic system here, right? The other one goes down the back, it bypasses the lungs and the heart, and it connects with the lower belly. Now the interesting thing about the dorsal vagal nerve, it's connected with deep, deep, deep rest. It's connected with the central channel, it's connected with the space in the lower belly. And when we are in need of very deep sleep and utter non-activity and a complete openness and freedom of being, it's the dorsal nerve that runs down the back to the lower belly that we need to activate. And so, long story short, breathing into the lower belly and doing yin breathing actually activates. This is just my opinion, but I've been doing some experiments on myself. Breathing into the lower belly, yin breathing style, activates the dorsal vagal nerve, and I go out like a light after a very short period of time. So that would be my suggestion. We're going to update your breathing body, and it's not threefold breathing, but it's breathing into the lower belly, and also developing yin breathing in that way as a regular practice, so that at night when you are sleepless, you can go into the practice and you'll activate your dorsal vagal nerve.
Good. Jason in DC. Everything I am experiencing depends on the same awareness and is undivided. Which senses are the body? Is physical sensation it, and the visual and auditory fields are not? What is not the body? I can't find anything.
Well, there is the body directly, and there is the body indirectly. The body directly is everything except the thinking mind. And in terms of direct experience, you can't find anything that's not the body because it's all the body. All experience arises in a pure way as the body and in the body. When we are thinking, then we separate ourselves from the visceral sensation of the body, which includes not only the sense organs and the sense fields, but what Eugene Gendlin in focusing calls the felt sense, or the visceral sense of being alive, or what Damasceno calls the feeling of one's state of being. It's a physical, it's a visceral, feeling. All of that is the body, and when we think and we separate, we go into a part of the body that is it's not felt, and at that point we have separated it. But ultimately in Mahamudra, even the thoughts are still the body, but that's a very, very advanced practice, and you can't get to it right away.
Should we do one more?
Sure.
This is Johanna. She's 19. She's from Estonia, and she's about to graduate high school. And about 3 weeks ago, I finished an art project during which I was listening to Mahamudra for the modern world. I didn't fully participate in any of the guided practices since I was painting at the time, although I have done the Mahamudra ground transmission meditation. Everything was fine then, but ever since I finished my art project, I've constantly been tired and depressed, although with a few occasions I actually feel okay, but they never last for long. I've also been having mental breakdowns a couple times a week, and they're getting worse. I have senses that there's someone in the room with me, or a black whirlwind of swords. I try to ask the Buddhas and Dakinis to help me, and I don't get any answers. Because of my studies at school, I don't have enough time to do my practices as much as I would like, and none of them seem to be helping anyway. The fact is that my exams are coming up, and everything's very straining on me. I'm at my wit's end. What should I do?
Mm-hmm. Well, the painful thing, and I know this is particularly true of me in graduate school, that the timing of the spiritual life, the process of regulating and dysregulating, which is so fundamental to our growth, sometimes it feels like it's in conflict with the demands of the external world. And I think in this case, I would default back to a very basic practice. I would just do yin breathing. I would lie down, whenever you feel distressed and upset and anxious, and just breathe into your lower belly. And what that does is, it activates what we call the Vagal Brake, B-R-A-K-E, brake, like putting your foot on the brake. And the Vagal Brake, it downregulates our system, it activates the parasympathetic system, and the fight or flight response, which obviously is what's going on with her now. She's sort of freaked out and doesn't know what to do. It actually sets that aside and it downregulates that. So sorry for so much neurobiology tonight, but that's really what we're talking about here. We're talking about needing to get into the depth of peace and connectedness of our parasympathetic system. And doing yin breathing is the way to go, and it will really help you to do that. I wouldn't. The thing is, you cannot just push yourself indefinitely. I think that's something that it's very tough being in school and having a lots at stake in exams and so on. So I understand that and I appreciate it. But if you're a very sensitive person, you also have to really take care of yourself, truly, and you have to listen to your body, and you have to try to arrange things so that you're not pushing yourself into the red zone. And I think right now you're in the red zone, and it's not because of Mahamudra for the modern world, it's because of the stress you're under, and it sounds like you're very, very sensitive, very open, and very aware person, and it's strange, but if we are that kind of person, it's almost we have to be a lot more precise and accurate and have a lot more integrity in the way we work with ourselves. So just to get you through this period, though, I really would recommend yin breathing and also 10 points practice as a way to get yourself back into a downregulated state, which to do your exams, you kind of need to downregulate, if that makes any sense. Is that it, or do we have some more?
That's it.
No
That's
more
it.
questions?
Mm-mm.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you have any? Am I going to get through the next 24 hours?
Yeah.
I think we're doing good. Yeah, I appreciate your coming over.
I'm happy to be here.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's great. And I feel like the questions and the interactions are, it's really interesting. People comment, it makes them feel close to us, but I think we feel very close to them too, don't we?
Yeah.
Don't you feel that
Yeah,
way?
I do.
Hearing from folks. And one thing I want to say to everybody here is, please give us feedback and, not only questions, but just comments or things, even things you'd like me to address in these live streams. That would be, it'd be wonderful. Just to give you a heads up, next week I'm going to be in the Sounds True studios, and we are going to try, once again, we've been working on this for several years, and already tried once and didn't work out. But I think this time I'm ready to do to record a Sounds True program on the basically the same material that we covered in The Body Loves, and I think it's called The Awakening Heart, and the subtitle is something like the bodhicitta practices in Tibetan Buddhism. But obviously, the bodhicitta practices are the practices of loving kindness. In our lineage are different. They're done in more Vajrayana style, much more somatic. So next week I won't be here for the live stream, and we'll figure something out and let you know. And then the week after I will be here because I'm taking a week off to prepare for the following week when I'll be back in the studio for another week. So we have potentially 12 days of recording, and we don't know if we're doing a 15 CD program or a 30 CD program yet. We won't know till we get in there. So next week we'll do something different. I won't be here. The week after I will be here. The week after that I won't be here, and then I'll be back for a few weeks until I leave for the UK. So just to let everybody know what's going on. Very good.
I have a few announcements about upcoming programs.
Yes, that'd be great.
One is The Wild Body with senior teachers Jeremy Lowry and Colette Smart. It's called Discovering the Wild Body. It's going to be in Crestone, which is such a wonderful place to practice. And The Journey Home is a somatic meditation.
And when is that?
That was not given to me. Sorry, I should have had that in here. But
do you know, Jonathan, the dates?
Yes.
I know registration's closing soon.
We're looking it up.
I'll go ahead and tell you about the next one, and then we'll let you know about the dates. The Journey Home is a somatic meditation retreat coming up in June to be held just outside of Vancouver on Salt Lake Island. And that will be with senior teacher Neil McKinley. It's a week-long retreat that will explore the foundational methods of somatic meditation.
We don't know the date of that either.
It's in June. I know that much.
Are you looking this up, Jonathan?
Our internet isn't.
It's not working.
Not working. Okay.
It's all on the website.
on
If
the
you go
website,
under
yeah. Look
program
under-
calendar, it's all there.
Came up. Discovering the Wild Body is May 14th through May 22nd.
May 14th through May 22nd for Discovering the Wild Body in Crestone.
The Journey Home is June 9th through June 16th.
The Journey Home is June 9th through June 16th, and that's in Vancouver.
Yeah, that's going to be a great program. Yeah. Neil taught the first 2 weeks of this last Daten, and a couple of years ago he taught the whole Daten. Very, very wonderful teacher, and very, very powerful. Jeremy Lowry and Colette Smart are also tantrikas of the highest order, and they're going to be talking about the 5 wisdoms that are manifest in our body. And the concept of the wild body is a body that is spontaneous and free, and the Tibetan term is lundrup. And whatever arises in our body is an expression of wisdom. So that's going to be Vajrayana style somatic program, but for everybody, not just for Vajrayana people. Yeah. Is that it?
That's it.
Very good. Okay, folks, once again, thank you for being with us, and I will see you soon.